Alrighty, here we go. My name is Travis Neville. This is the Travis Neville Podcast. I'm excited as hell. This conversation that I had with Regina DeSantis was awesome. She is super interesting. What she calls herself a reformed family law attorney. She's still a licensed licensed attorney in the state of Pennsylvania. But after all that, she spent, I think it was 22 years she spent in the business. She saw a need, and she is currently filling that need, and this is what she does. She's a divorce coach. She calls it the 21st century family transition. I'll throw the graphics up here for you. This is how you can get a hold of her on Facebook. What you do is, if you're considering getting a divorce, you get a hold of her and say, look, I'm thinking about doing this. Can you tell me how it's going to go? Can you coach me up? And her deal is she'll get you focused on your life after that and make it so that it's less financially stressful, less emotionally traumatic for the families, and just keep you focused and grinding in the right direction and get you through it. It's a really cool service, and she's a real smart lady and had a lot of cool things to say. But that's what she does. Regina DeAngelis, I mispronounced it. I keep mispronouncing it. But Regina DeAngelis, here she is on Facebook again. Great conversation. We talked about life and relationships and men and women, and it was awesome. Real pleased to have this conversation. You guys enjoy. Good to go.
Yeah, so we can kind of go forward. So I think that's the big ones. I don't think that there's a need really for marriage as an institution based on what it was designed to do.
So what was it designed to do? What was it designed to do in your mind?
Yeah, marriage as an institution evolved as really a way to protect women from being destitute. And it makes sense when you
still does, don't you think?
Right. It's still, that's some of the few protections that are in the divorce code that are really beneficial. And I have to explain to people all the time is that, once you get married, the law did presume that the woman was not working, that she was the stay-at-home mom. But that is why we have to share the retirement accounts. That's what really makes people angry when they go to get divorced. Like, I've been contributing all these years and that money is in my name, but they have to look at the big pictures. Like, this family was saving that pot of money with the intention of it being shared.
So then it's kind of a turd in the punch bowl if she's working then, right? Or if maybe she makes more money than he does.
And it makes it easier. It makes divorce way easier because you can say, oh, your 401k has this much money in it, your 401k has this much money in it, and if there is a discrepancy, we can easily transfer what we need to transfer to even it out or to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in your family.
So and I don't mean to anyway, if you have, so say he's making 3 times what she makes, they split and she's going to have the same amount of retirement he has?
If he's making 3 times what she makes and they split, what happens at the end, in a community property state, everything is 50-50. And that would be like California, Texas. There's not very many community property states. Okay. Most states are what they call equitable distribution. So they look at what's equitable. And I explain to people, most places, it's going to be between a 60-40 division of everything, usually in the wife's favor. If it's 60-40, it usually goes in the favor of the person who is making less. And the reason for that is because they look at that income discrepancy. If someone's making 3 times more, they say, you're going to earn back that 10% discrepancy way faster than she ever would.
So what if it goes the opposite way in a state like that, in a situation you just designed or just laid out?
Yeah.
What if she's making 3 times more?
if she's making 3 times more, he would have, and this is where sexism comes into play. The factors are the same. The analysis is the same. So it might be that he should get 60% of the assets. And what I've found in all the years of doing this, number one, that's a rare scenario. It is rare that the husband is making less. It does happen. Mm-hmm. And the husbands are not inclined to ask for it.
That's exactly right. I knew you were going to say that. I guess hope is the wrong word, but I know that's a piece that I'm constantly trying to tell the people who listen to my show and who read my books is that, hey, you guys, you got to speak up. I know it makes you feel weak. It makes you feel like you're asking for help. It hurts your pride, but you're going to get the shaft. I mean, It's kind of a big deal. And I'm guilty of that too. I mean, when I got divorced, my ex-wife was a lawyer. And I was a teacher at the time. You know how that income's going to be described, or the discrepancy is going to be there. I didn't get anything. She got the house, and I just walked. I didn't ask for anything, and that's on me. I didn't want to have a thing that I didn't earn. And in my mind, everybody's going to say, "Oh, I dealt with this bullshit for all this time, so I earned it." I don't see it that way. I chose to be there, and I chose to leave. And so I can look into the mindset and see that that's how it goes, but. There've got to be some protections. Like, don't you think? So does it have, when the opposite's true, when he's making all the money, is she asking for that money, or is the court just giving it to him?
Yeah, well, it's always the assumption, when you hire a lawyer, that's what you're hiring them for, to ask for that on your behalf. Mm-hmm. So, around here, what they do, and this is why it gets so astronomically expensive, because you'd have 2 lawyers doing exactly the same thing.
Going back and forth at each other.
Yeah, duplicating their work.
Billing and billing.
Right. So the lawyer's got to get a list of all those assets. And then they always, like, if you just said to me, I've got a teacher and a lawyer who are married and they're 40 years old. They've got 2 kids. Without knowing the sexes of who was the teacher and who was the lawyer.
Right.
Any lawyer around here is going to say that's a 60-40 case. They know that the teacher, if the teacher is hiring them, that they're going to gather up that list of what the assets are and send a letter to the other lawyer asking for 60% of those assets. And that's like the opening, like the shot across the bow. And then the other lawyer is going to say she doesn't deserve 60 because X, Y, and Z. And you go back and forth endlessly until most cases resolve somewhere between 53-55% to the under-earning spouse. Wow. And by the time they land there, though, and this is what I tell my clients, which makes part of the process so easy too, you say, you have to look at what you're fighting over and what the amount of money you're asking for. Don't get caught up in, like, I deserve 60%. The difference between 53 and 60% might be $12,000.
Right. Not a big deal.
And you're going to pay your attorney way more.
At least that much. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But if the husband is the teacher, I don't know if, maybe his lawyer would ask for 60-40, but it would be, I know that the lawyer would be telling him he has a right to ask for it, but whether or not he felt good about pursuing it. Same thing with alimony. In that case, that person may or may not be entitled to alimony, depending on your state. But there would probably be a presumption that there would be some sort of ongoing spousal support.
So how about the length of time? Like, I can remember when I filed in Indiana, it took, I think it took 6 months. No, I think that's North Carolina law. What's with how many states have, do you know that offhand? How many states have that? You got to wait a certain amount of time after you file?
Yeah, a lot of states. In fact, I don't know one, I haven't worked in one where there isn't some sort of statutory waiting period, but like, this is like, I'll tell you this secret. No one checks. So if you're doing a cooperative divorce and you're the plaintiff filing the paperwork and you write, we've been separated, since June 1st and it's now January. As long as your spouse doesn't file something contesting that, they're just
granted to you.
They just, They just
Good.
process it.
I
So
suppose
that's
it makes sense that that cooling off period or whatever, you know what, we changed our minds. It's just a bad argument. But I bet you once you get to the courthouse and file during that 6-month period, the numbers of people who don't follow through with it have got to be almost invisible.
It's almost zero.
Yeah.
Literally almost zero. And I am working with a client right now who she did withdraw the divorce action, but not because she didn't want the divorce, but because he got so wound up crazy that she thought,
I found out.
Yeah, I can't go through with it. So now she did just refile it again. But yeah, in all the years I've been doing this, which is 25, almost 26, I have one case where months later, the guy actually did call me back and say, guess what? We got remarried. But I don't know if they stayed remarried. But that's it, one in all those years.
What's the problem? I mean, you've seen a lot of them. What's usually what's going on? You know what I mean? Can you boil it down to a couple of basic things? And I know you're probably going to throw out their communication, and I feel like that's an easy way out for you. But what is it? What's the deal? What's the are people getting married for the wrong reasons? My thought is that people don't change. You are who you are, and maybe you just get tired of that. I would tell you that especially for men, your behaviors will change, and that's completely an environmental thing. And be it, I hear that all the time, with the work that I do, the comments I get on social media and the haters that I have, it's always the same thing. They're always like, well, he was a terrible man. And then find out they have 3 kids with him. I'm like, well, what'd you have 3 kids with a terrible man for? And then they always say the same thing. Well, he changed. He
wasn't like that.
Yeah. People don't change. They don't. Now your behaviors for a man, your behaviors will change based on environment. And young lady, you're the environment. So you had a big hand in him changing. I don't know. These are just my thoughts. I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is it? Why is it that people are not staying together?
I think you're right. We get into ingrained patterns and expectations. And I've dealt with a lot of male clients who are really gun shy about getting into relationships after their divorce because they think all women are controlling. I can't be myself. The expectations that are put on me are impossible to meet. And if I try, I'm still told I'm a piece of crap, I didn't do it right. And so they literally give up. And I think it's technically called learned helplessness. We just stop. And men go through that. And I really do think it is a gender role issue because things are great, yada yada. We have kids, and then the women go into hyper vigilant mom mode, and I have a really hard time relinquishing control of what that looks like in the house, with some of the childcare things, to the dad, and that I think all has to go back into our social programming. And women, then, if we were to do that, even if we wanted to, because we're exhausted, we feel somehow like we're a failure. So once you have kids, something shifts inside women where we're going to do it all now and we're going to be great at it. And the husbands say, she clearly wants me to step back. And then they do that until the kids are in middle school. And then the wife is like, I'm exhausted and you don't do anything to help me. And I want a divorce. And it's but so now I have the benefit of hindsight, right? And I can say, I know how you got here. I know how this went down. And so that's the vast majority of my cases are people who just get caught in those gender roles and they're not self-aware because nobody has the training to say, hey, this is what's happening to us. Very few people. So it's too late. By the time they figure it out, they're both so full of anger and resentment, and the men are so afraid, really, to come into the crossfires, that divorce is the most compassionate way forward to let them both begin to find themselves again.
Yeah, and I get it. I don't really get it. I never had kids, as I told you, but
Yeah.
I can imagine that that takes a lot of your, certainly your focus on yourself away. You know, I talked to a girl named Alexi Turner. She was great. I did a show with her a couple weeks ago, and she's a dating coach. So as I told you on the phone, she's on the front end, right? And she says that for women, what you said, social, influences. She said that the women are taught that there are these three things that they've got to be great at all of them. Like you said, I'm going to be great at all of them. And there's being a mom, being a wife, and then there's work. Now, okay, we're going to throw in this other thing. And each of those three things is an 8-hour day, and you got to remember you got 3 8 hours shifts in a day, but one of them sleeping. So which one are you gonna let go of? Which one are you gonna neglect? And it's almost always the husband. So you're never gonna, the kids are number one for sure, and your career, your pride won't let you let that go. But the husband ends up being the kind of the hind tip, and that's what she said anyway.
No, I mean, I would totally agree with that. And this is where the miscommunication part comes in, because the husband feels neglected. And the woman is exhausted. She finally walks in the house. Right. Even for stay-at-home moms, when there's an expectation when the husband walks in the house that she's off duty and she just wants to hand off the kid and go take a breather. And the miscommunication is the husband's been working all day too. He comes in the house just as exhausted. And I used to say, and I still do, like, the sexiest thing a guy can do is freaking dishes. Okay. Because that's going to make me feel so like you get it. Like, as tired as you are, you're still willing to help me, and you see how tired I am. And I think those little gestures, because what happens otherwise is you both kind of go retreat into your corners where you're yelling at each other in your head all day. And then sometimes it spills out. So it is like life. What we're dealing with right now, I think, is just the consequences of 1,000 years of social programming, then with the Industrial Revolution and like modern life thrown on top of it. And it's really the perfect storm.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate scenario, and I don't really see a fix. I keep hearing, as I research this stuff all day long, and we were at an all-time high in cohabitation, right? People aren't getting married, they aren't committing, and to some extent, I agree with what you said earlier, and that's that it does require a lot more of your commitment. In some ways, from a male perspective, I'm thinking, well, I don't have anything that's really keeping her here. She's only 100% here because she wants to be, so better make sure she wants to be here. So that, I like that angle. I like that, to me, I've always thought, well, I'd rather have somebody around who wants me, not necessarily needs me. I mean, I want to respect the person I'm with, but there's that masculine desire to be respected, needed. Hey, I can't do this without you. Guys love to hear that. And hey, the dishes, for example, you come home and she's got these 5 things on her list to do. And that, hey, if I help her with that list, I'm going to have her time to myself a lot more quickly. So I'm happy to do that. But the presentation of it becomes such a big key, right? So she's exhausted and feeling terrible. And she doesn't have the time to walk up and kiss him on the cheek and say, I'm so glad to see you. It would really help me if you could do X, Y, and Z. That's a lot to ask, I think, in that scenario. But unfortunately, men are wired to, that's going to help a lot. It's going to make a big difference. If she's yelling at you because you're not doing these things, well, then you're probably not going to do much. I don't know. It's just a crappy situation in so many ways. And I keep coming back to this same idea that, I don't know, for a woman, I just feel like marriage is just very one-sided for women. I feel like all the advantages are on her side. If you're going to get married, there's really no incentive there for men to do that. I don't know. I just don't. And again, I'm older too. I'm in my mid-40s as well. And I just don't see it that way. I don't know.
Standpoint, I mean, I think people get married later and later, but they still probably primarily get married because they want to have kids. And so as you get older and you already have your kids, your second marriage, I don't really see a need to do that. And from a financial standpoint, it benefits women, I guess, when you're raising kids, But as you're an
For sure.
adult, don't I think men expect, I don't know. I mean, I guess we always hear about gold diggers and women who expect to be taken care of. But you could answer, but do men, as they get into their next relationships, they're not looking to take care of someone, are they? You tell me. Like, I'm thinking they want someone who is self-sufficient. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's still ingrained
Financially,
in,
at least.
yeah, from the financial perspective, I don't know. I had a girl who lived here in my house with me for a while, and that gave me a tremendous sense of satisfaction that I had this to offer her. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it wasn't a situation she could have lived by herself somewhere else. It
Yeah.
wouldn't have been as not as nice as here. But so
Right.
that felt good. But eventually you're going to ask yourself, well, if she didn't need some place to live, I'm overgeneralizing, would she want to be
Right.
here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. It just depends on your level of insecurity, I suppose. But the to answer your question, what does a guy want when they're older? I mean, I don't know if I can really answer that well, Regina, because I still kind of am looking to be able to have a family, maybe. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yes.
I have the same kind of outlook I always did on it. But
Right.
I've got buddies who are divorced, and the things that they say are, I just want a peaceful home. I want to come home to a place where it's not battle there like it is at work. You know what I mean? That's the biggest thing. Don't make my life harder,
Absolutely. And that's what I think too, to remember those decisions if you end up in divorce. And I do think that you can totally avoid divorce by really making the other people feel appreciated for whatever role they're playing in the house. It's like what you're saying, like if she comes in and kisses him on the cheek and says, how was your day? And he gives her a hug and says, how was your day? They both are starting off with a feeling of appreciation.
Oh, and that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. Like, you think about your dog, right? Think about your
Right.
dog. He gets you getting home.
Right.
He gets that right every single time. And it's those little
Exactly.
things, I think, that really they add up, and those are
Absolutely.
what your relationship is built on. You know what I mean? And
Right.
are they going to respond to your bids for affection? When you're like, hey, I had this success at work today. Are you happy for me? Or are you like, okay, well, but you still need to do the dishes? You know what I mean? How's
Exactly.
that going to go? Those little things, that's what the relationship is built on. And
Absolutely.
most people don't get that. They're like, well, I still live here and I pay all the bills and I sleep with you every night. And I'm not cheating on you. I don't beat you. Well,
Right.
of course you don't do that shit. I wouldn't even be considering it if you did. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. And so
those little things are pretty massive.
and that's what those are the first things to go when people get stressed out
Yep.
and in their heads because they're running to the PTO meeting and three different practices. And so I do think, I might be setting the women's movement back, 300 years, but I always said that it's really hard to maintain a healthy relationship when both people are working outside of the home
Yeah, it
with
is.
intense jobs, and I always really thought that the role of a stay-at-home mom, not just, it's not she's not working. We all know she's killing herself inside the house, but I really believe that the most valuable thing, part of that is what you said, like making that home a peaceful place of refuge really for all of you.
For everybody.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then this goes back to the divorce code and why it's set up that way, because if the marriage falls apart, if her husband runs off with his secretary or whatever, so
She's got reasonable assurance of having some security, and that makes sense.
yeah, and that's all. But and even through my process, if I encounter, a stay-at-home mom, and it really is just making sure that value is put on both parties' contributions to the family. And I really do see men who like sit with me and cry, like they weren't able
Yeah.
to express how grateful they were to her for running the kids all over so that he was at work or he was traveling for work. And it's so sad. Then we're all sitting at the table and crying because if I can get them there, even though that marriage is not being saved, the divorce process is being saved. Then they come to a real level of, appreciation and gratitude for what they tried to do, and we move forward from there as a building block to move forward.
You make it sound like there's because it just seems, it doesn't make sense to me that you can be at such a tumultuous point in your life and it can actually kind of go well. but you're seeing that, you're making that happen.
I'm seeing it happen, but I've set really like firm rules for people. And we do this in Zoom or in person or whatever. I'll say, you know, by choosing to work with me, and sometimes I do have to convince him, but like I said, that's a hurdle I jump pretty easily these days. But by choosing to work with me, you guys are both showing that you want something different for your families. And then I give them my little speech about how I've seen this 8,000 times, and I know you guys are both doing the absolute best you can. And I don't let them talk about how we got there. I start off with, you're agreeing.
It's good.
We're going to do it this way.
Shit. Yeah,
and we don't
talking about the past
back.
doesn't help us at this point. We got to talk about how we're moving forward.
Yeah, I always just say, oh, I can assume, like, I know, and there's no judgment because I've seen everything, you know. So I make them feel really comfortable and know that it's forward motion from here on out.
Yeah, that's and it never really pulls you down. Hey, I mean, like I said, being and dealing with something that's so sad all the time, you just kind of get, and I, again, don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you get kind of toughened to it a little bit, or I mean, do they still kind of get to you sometimes?
Well, like, yeah, twice this week I was sitting in a mediation with all three of us crying. It depends on how tired I am by the time I get to that last mediation.
Sure.
Yeah, but because it's always sad, but I get the benefit of appreciation from my clients because they talk to me for the first time and they've like gone through, because I have an online component of really emotional education and some of the logistical education. They do that and they come in already with the mindset of, okay, I know that there's no point in looking backwards, and they're so relieved that if we had to do this, at least it's not this terror that I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I imagine it's scary going into it. I know that. You know that.
Yeah. So I don't get burnt out because I really get such gratification from really feeling like I'm helping. You know, my regular clients no divorce client is ever happy, really, because they're always mad. Even if they won, they're always mad about having to pay the lawyer in the end, regardless.
So you and I are co-teaching. We're co-teaching a class, and it's called Relationships 101 or Marriage 101 or whatever you want to call it.
Marriage 101.
How to make it till death do us part. 101, whatever it is. What's your half of the curriculum going to be? What are you going to teach these kids? They're high school kids, right? What are you going to teach them?
Yeah. Am I allowed to step on your toes and
absolutely
take what you said? Because I think what you said is the absolute key, to not forget that you need to constantly be showing appreciation for the efforts of the other one. That's the first thing. And the second thing that I've age has brought me to believe that you are clearly not going to change anybody ever, right? And
that's a big one.
For your spouse to be happy with you, he's got to feel like you are supporting him in whoever he is. And so,
and you're his biggest champion. You are,
right?
Yeah, behind him.
You're his biggest champion, and you cheer when he gets his hole-in-one or whatever. And I do think, though, that in exchange for that, the husband needs to be saying, like, hey, what do you need on Sunday? You know, I'm going to be out with the guys or doing whatever on Saturday. Yeah. I'm all yours. So as long as the wife doesn't feel emotionally abandoned by his being himself, then I think that's really important. And it goes both ways.
I think I'd open up with this one very basic concept, and that's that I can't make you happy. Know that going into any relationship, you cannot make that other person happy. You can make them smile.
Yeah.
And those smiles will add up and they'll be good. And things will be better than they were, right? But You got to be fundamentally happy or I'm not interested. Know that going in. Be good at saying no early on. I tell guys all this all the time, that especially guys in their early 20s, right? I tell them spend a whole lot less time on women and a whole lot more time on money, because in the end, it's going to make you more marketable. It is what it is. You know, you're going to mature through that process. You're going to become more able to understand these things and able to kind of have a grasp on that other person. And but yeah, that's the key thing. I parallel it to this. Like when I used to coach track and field, I would tell kids, I cannot make you fast. I can make you faster if you got, but you got to be fast to begin with, and I'll make you a little bit faster than that. I can definitely do that. Know that's how it is in a relationship. You have to make them smile as much as you can, but it's on them to make themselves happy. So there's two pieces to that. You know, don't burn yourself out trying to do it. And number two, when they are unhappy, you can't let that make you unhappy too. Now you got two unhappy people.
Yeah. And that's where I think their unhappiness, or both parties' unhappiness, comes in from. Part of what I say, I do think that dovetails really nicely, because I think the reason they're unhappy is because within our roles in the marriage, we're slowly giving up pieces of ourselves, and that's going to make you fundamentally unhappy. So really making sure that you're supporting your spouse in being their true self, whatever makes them happy. That's the key.
Yeah, that's that concept. I can see that, and I think that it's natural. Like if you have kids and you do have to give up a lot of yourself for a window of time, right?
Right.
For middle school, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it is, you're going to have to give up a lot, but then you transfer back into being a little bit more relationship centric, more individually centric. And I think that process, that's got to be tough for people too, to start. I don't know who makes it through that. I mean, you have friends. You've been around a little while. Who makes it through that transition well? What makes that go well for people?
Yeah, I do think it's the couples who maintained that high level of friendship and sort of teamwork throughout that, getting to that middle school phase, are the ones that make it. The ones that really felt like we're dividing and conquering, and his job is to make the money, and I'm doing everything else. And I know a lot of people who have been like flat out told that by their husbands. You know, those people don't make it because it's just rebuilds up so much resentment on the woman's part. And I think that's why 85% or more of divorces are filed by women, because in too many scenarios, the men do think, I'm making the money. Like, what does she want from me? I'm killing myself. I'm paying all the bills. And it's a lack of communication where the women's thinking, I want you to make the money. And I also want to hug when you come in from work. And I want you to do the dishes. And those are the people that don't make it. The ones that really see themselves in really defined roles. And they're just not supporting each other in either way, either direction. He's not feeling appreciated and she's feeling angry. So those people don't make it.
I wonder, and I mean, it's going to be impossible to get a good beat on this, but like you said, you know, most divorces are filed by women. I wonder how many of them are really happy when they leave. Like they think, all right, hey, I'm unhappy, must be his fault, so I'm going to get divorced. And you know, I go back to what I said earlier. I mean, one person can't make another person happy. Either you're happy or you're not. Now, of course, there are always exceptions, and that's what, you know, when I post this commentary, that's what I'm going to get. Well, if he's abusive, come on. I know there are tough situations, right? But being unhappy, maybe you're just fucking unhappy. You know what I mean? Like, why don't you work on getting happier? How about that?
Well, that's because I think they feel trapped in that container of whatever that marriage looks like. And I don't think anyone, well, I know nobody just says, I'm unhappy and I'm filing for divorce. We're done. I think the average person like languishes in that unhappiness for 5 or 6 years. Usually when people come to me, they've tried marriage counseling, but you're hitting on something that, you know, they have to figure out, or they're not going to be successful in their next marriage. And that is, if you are dealing with depression, anxiety issues, mental health issues, or, you know, that are really maybe exacerbated by the stress of your marriage. So you have this horrible feeling. The only way out, you see, is out of this marriage. You've got to be aware that if you don't address that underlying issue, you're just going to repeat the pattern in the next marriage.
Yeah. But I also see the logic, and this is where I thought you might have been going, that if you have that, you got that depression, anxiety, whatever it is, and you're in this bad state, maybe that environment is going to be a little bit too much stress for you to be able to deal with it. Like in the old days, 100 years ago, they'd send you to a sanatorium where everything's just quiet and peaceful and nice so that you can work on yourself. It is difficult to work on yourself when you're in an environment that's tougher.
That's, people sometimes say to me, I don't know if I want a divorce, but I know I need a separation. And that's really hard to get the spouse to understand. But that, I think, is essentially what that is. Like, they're a cry for help. Like, they don't even know which way is up anymore. They're so buried in stress. And so, I know I used to joke before I got divorced, like, do we need a custody schedule so I can get a break? Because actually, that's one of the weird silver linings of my divorce. I actually got time where I was like, I've got 3 whole days now, which hadn't happened in like 15 years, right? So, and how to make somebody understand that that's something that you're feeling without them getting all defensive and like.
Yeah, because it's going to come off as, I don't want you around for 3 days.
Right,
and nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out how to meet both people's emotional needs when they've gotten that far afield and far down the road, and avoid divorce while doing it. Most people do decide that I'm really sad about this, but I know that this relationship, in terms of the romantic piece, can't be saved. And so I'm trying to really help them maintain friendship piece, rebuild a sense of gratitude for each other, and then they're really solid co-parents when the divorce is over.
I do hear that a lot, just from talking to people that we were terrible partners, but we're great co-parents. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of people, they're best friends, or they were friends before, but they've realized they're not good husband and wife. So, and that's the way it should be. And I think that's the model that we want. In 2022, families come in all shapes and sizes. And so I just say, we're going to be a 2-household family. You've got more people who love you, when the other significant others come into the picture. And so we have to sort of destigmatize it and really be proud of the people who are able to provide a stable environment for their kids and really good model for their kids of what kindness looks like in really hard situations.
Yeah. You run into a lot of cheaters. Do you get a lot of that? I'm sure you've had a few.
I do have a few, and that's really hard to come back from. And that's one of the things
I don't think I could. I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, it really is. And I tease my clients too, like, there's no judgment, because what I have learned from, talking to so many people too, is that I've never encountered, I'm sure that it exists, like you were saying, there's always an exception.
Yeah, and you can't make rules based on those exceptions, though. Go ahead.
Right, exactly. But most people like sort of literally like fall into affairs. They realize that, and for the man and the woman, the first person who looks at them when they're feeling so lonely in their marriage, the first person who looks at them and says, hey, how are you really doing today? And like means it, they're going to, it's like, and that's going to start that seed of like what you're saying, appreciation. The other person is going to really appreciate that someone saw them. And so to me, when I hear that there was an affair, I say, if the spouse who was being cheated on doesn't want the divorce or is outraged, I say, no, no one's going to condone that behavior. But to me, I know that that's a symptom of how lonely and broken this marriage was, and how really lonely the person who strayed was feeling. And if they're feeling that lonely, there's no way the other person, if they're being honest, is really
They're feeling that good either. Yeah, you can tell them if somebody's looking to get out, you can't ignore it. You can feel it no matter what. You might not be able to put your finger on anything, but you know that you feel some tension there. And I agree with you. I mean, I've watched people I know go through affairs, and it seems like it's always the same thing. There's just this one thing that they're missing in their relationship, and this other person provides it. And so you look at them like they're rainbows and glitter and all that. And really, they're just filling this gap that you needed. And people will say, "Oh, it's just sex. You just wanted to, have sex with that young girl." Well, I mean, for men, that's your gauge a lot of times for your level of competence, right? So you want to know that you're doing a good job in your relationship, and sex is a good way for you to be able to objectively gauge that. Well, she wants to have sex with me, and so things must be going okay. And then it's unspoken, right? So, all right, things are going well in my relationship if I'm having sex regularly. And if that sex isn't there, she's obviously got an issue going on, something that she doesn't like about what he's doing or whatever it might be. And you start feeling like you're not valued. And then, somebody else comes up and provides that value for you. You think, it's a trap. It's a trap. And when you start feeling like that, I don't know. I advise guys all the time. I had a really wise friend of mine tell me this. Man, if you think that you're in a situation where he just said, basically, don't ever put yourself in a position where you could cheat. And what he means is, you got this coworker maybe who's hitting on you or whatever. Don't go to the bar after work with that person, right? Don't be alone with them. Don't ever be in a situation where the marshmallow's on the table, so to speak. We were talking earlier about things that predict success in kids. And I'm sure you've heard this study in 1970 about the marshmallows, right? Where it predicts delayed gratification, right?
Yeah.
So one of the biggest indicators, one of the biggest producers of effects in the study was the actual presence of the marshmallow. Like if the researchers said, "Hey, I'm going to put this marshmallow here," 3-year-old kid, 6-year-old kid, whatever they were, actually looking at the marshmallow made it way harder to not take it, right? If it was just the idea of the marshmallow, it's easy to turn that off, but you got to keep the marshmallow off the table. Stay out of situations where that might happen.
It is so true. Yeah. And I think the more, if you find yourself, I think we all just need to be more self-aware. If the guy or whoever, it doesn't need to be the guy, but if they're going out after work consistently, where they're in a situation where they might end up meeting someone, I always say to people, like, they're running. They're clearly avoiding a situation at home that they don't want to be in. Mm-hmm. So if your spouse is starting to not come home all the time, regardless of whether they're having an affair, it's something to think about. What are they missing from our relationship that's causing them to be out all the time? I just think
a lot of times it could just be respect. I mean, I think about
the
reason I coached sports when I was a teacher. Mm-hmm. I was respected, like those kids looked up to me, and I had assistant coaches and all that. And that feels really good when you're not getting respected at home. You know what I mean? Right. Things like that you don't even realize what the things are that you need a lot of times. Like you said, people need to be more self-aware. I'm spinning off of that.
What's the issue, or what am I trying to self-soothe here, or whatever?
Yeah. So what is it for women? We've talked about the being exhausted and different dynamics, but where are men stubbing their toe with women most of the time? What are men doing wrong that you see a lot of times?
I do. I hear the same story over and over again.
I would guess that you do, yeah.
And what it really is that they get stuck in not understanding, I guess, how exhausting that caregiver, that constant caregiver mothering role is. And the clients that I have, it's almost like the men are resentful, and this is really toxic to a relationship. If a woman tries to cry out for help and say, "I'm just so tired," what I hear is that they're met with, "But I'm exhausted too, and I'm working," right? And that's justified. And so it's figuring out how to bridge that gap. But what I know what happens is and I'm betting the same thing happens on the male side, from the male perspective, when a woman is like rebuffed that way, she just gets up, and her need for affection and her need for support doesn't go away, but she stops asking. And then she just starts, like I said, yelling in her head. And it manifests itself in explosive fights periodically, and ultimately in divorce papers, because she says,
that idea that you say, I think that's on both sides, the kind of cooping up the tension, like yelling at them in your head, and
right.
not having it out. It's a concept in my second book that I talk about quite a bit, and that's just being honest with yourself about what you need and what you don't need. And it might be, you might be thinking to yourself, well, hey, I don't want to cause problems. I want to, you know, keep the peace, right? So I don't want to bring up this thing that's going to be an argument. But invariably, hey, the fact that you're not affectionate with me, or you're not doing the dishes, or whatever the complaint is, you swallowing that down. You can do some of that. You can do a little bit of it, but in my experience, what's going to happen is it's going to come out someplace else. It's going to come out on where she parked her car, where the shoes, some random thing, and then your partner just thinks you're a fucking asshole. You know what I mean?
And that doesn't help. Yeah. Right. And look at what you said too, like how it goes together. If he comes home, he's tired, and she's complaining and crying or whatever. I used to joke too, like, my natural personality is not to be a horrible person. If I'm being a horrible person, you know me well enough to know that something's wrong. So ask what's wrong or how you can help me. But so if you come in the house and I'm exhausted and I say, oh my God, I'm so tired. And you say, really rough day. But then you pick up and do the dishes. Then I'm tired, but now I'm awake and I'm going to sleep with you. And then, so you finish, you know, you solve the sex problem, and you might solve all the problems just by doing
that. And guys are, you know, not as able to pick up on those things, right? So we're list people, right? And I was telling you, pardon me, I was telling you that, I think I told you this on the phone, that men are great at lists, right? And like, we'll get most of the things done that you put on our list to do, but there's also a list going in our heads of things not to do. And those are the things that we've been punished for or chided for, or
to avoid.
Yeah. So those things are going to disappear immediately. We're awesome at that list. We will avoid that list at all costs. And a lot of times asking, hey, how was your day? You might get yelled at. Oh, I guess I'm not going to do that again. So yeah, there's so many communication barriers there, and I agree with you though. And I tell guys this all the time. It's tough to tell younger guys this, but older guys get it, that lots of times what she says she needs and what she really needs, they're two different things. And you've got to pay attention to her to know her well enough to be able to see that that's, you know, she's saying this thing, and hey, I want this, I need this from you, but really it's this other thing. And you need to know that as a man. That's part of your job as being a partner. You've got to be kind of a detective a little bit, you know?
The sign, you probably have it in your house. Like, it's all these different things, like how to interpret a woman. And it's like, if she says fine, everything is not fine.
It's definitely not fine.
Like, yeah, it's definitely not fine. How are you? Fine. No, everything is not fine.
Yeah.
There's like 5 or 6 things, but it is really pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I don't have that in my house. I'm a single man. That's not a thing I would have, but you might have it in yours.
Oh my God. No, I actually saw it in someone else's house, and that's what I thought too. Like, why do they have that? What's going on?
Yeah, that came from an argument or a joke, maybe. Hopefully a joke about an argument.
Yep, a joke about an argument. But it really is hard. I think fundamentally, you know, men and women are just wired differently and have different needs and different expectations. And we've been socially programmed in completely opposite ways. And so now to bring all of the realities of the 21st century with all of that weirdness and biological differences makes it really hard to maintain marriage.
Speaking of signs, I saw this one. It said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, and I'm not going to get it right, but that men are taught how to treat a woman, but not what to expect from one. Women are taught what to expect from a man, but not how to treat one. Your thoughts? And want me to say it again?
Yeah, but I'm thinking like men, I think, do have a whole set of expectations of what they expect from women.
What do you think those are? That's a great conversation. What do you think men expect from women?
I'm just trying to think what on the woman's side. I think part of what our issues is in relationships is that women's expectations of men have dramatically changed, and men are still trying to like catch up and figure out what that is.
I agree.
But from the man's perspective, don't you think men still expect dinner and like clean kids and laundry done? I don't know. I think that
I think you and I are older. I'm going to tell you that people in their
younger
20s,
kids don't.
They don't think about that stuff.
See, I think that's good. Do you not?
No, actually, I don't think it's good, because I think that having reasonably well-defined roles and expectations,
Right.
that helps everybody. Good fences make good neighbors. The more that if I know what to expect from you and you know what to expect from me, well, then we're good. But if you have these expectations and I'm mad at you for a thing you didn't do that I agreed we were going to do, but I didn't tell you that I agreed to that. Like, I know that I expect X, Y, Z from you, but you don't know that you're expected to do that. That's you got a problem there.
The problem is now, like, so I do think, and that's part of like with the stay-at-home mom thing, like we know what the expectations are on the stay-at-home mom. What the dad doesn't
that's clear.
know. Yeah. And what the dad doesn't know is all of the extra expectations that she is still putting on him in addition to making money and paying all the bills. And that's where I think things go off the rails. But that's fascinating. See, I don't have, like, my clients are older, but my average client has been married between 15 and 30 years.
That's a good long run these days.
Yeah. So, and you know what it is? It's that middle school, they get married. There's like two breaking points, sort of the middle school kind of stress and the empty nester stress. They like
that's common. That's when my folks split, is when we left high school.
Yeah. So those are the two, and those are the clients that I deal with primarily. And, so I don't have much experience with that 20 to 35 range anymore. And so I would be curious, like you said, that the expectations are different. The men don't expect that from women anymore.
No, not really. I mean, unless you were raised pretty rurally and away from a lot of screens and things like that, which was, as you know, is becoming less and less common. It really it depends on how you grew up, I suppose. But in most cases, I think that society is telling both sides that they're absolutely equal. They just have different parts downstairs, but the expectations are the same on both of them. And I don't think that's ideal, because if we were both expected to do the same shit, what are we going to do? Everything 50-50? I mean, it only takes one person to go grocery shopping, and it only you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things there that I like clear expectations in all situations, but I don't know. Things happen. And again, it's just me being older, I guess. Go ahead.
But you have my wheels spinning now, because what I have always thought is that generation between their 20s and 30s is the first generation where those men were really taught that being emotional or being more self-aware and in touch with your emotions was socially acceptable. And I have thought that would be a huge help in healthier relationships, because, I always tease guys, like, do you need to go in your cave? Because I'm okay. I'll give you 3 days. Just let me know when you plan on coming out. But women, I've learned that through experience and age. Younger girls, if they were with a guy who was emotionally aware enough to be able to articulate, I'm struggling, I need 3 days, or I need 3 days is a lot, but you know what I mean? Like, this is what I need in this moment. I think it might be really helpful. And I think it goes the same way for women. Like, then guys are more in tune to understanding why women are so emotional. I thought the younger kids might be changing the way marriage looks for that next generation behind us. So I'll be curious. So
you're going to start having them as clients before you know it. I mean, they're going to get older and they're going to start to.
Yeah. And I bet you, like, that would change this whole conversation. So if they come to me and say, well, we did that, we were emotionally aware, then I'll have to start collecting data about why those relationships, collapsed.
Again, far from research, but, and I don't do what you do, but what I hear is this, that the complaint then from the woman becomes that he's not a real man. He's not masculine enough. You know, I don't know if you know Brene Brown. I think we might've talked about this on the phone.
Yeah, I
Brene
love
Brown.
her. Yeah, I don't know her personally yet, but I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah, it's come manifest that. You'll get it.
Yes, it's coming.
She's got this concept, right, that she wants everybody to be very vulnerable. I read Daring Greatly. I think I read another one of hers too.
Yeah, I love it. I have it sitting right here, actually.
And I know we're retreading old ground, but I think it's worth it for the people who are going to watch this, that she tells men that they need to be very vulnerable, like you're talking about. And again, my experiential wisdom on this, the people that I talk to, the people that I deal with, as soon as you do that, a part of her at her core is going to be disgusted by that. She needs you to be strong as a man. She needs you to be, now share your feelings and talk about it, but you can't just melt down, right? As a man, that's a trap. Yeah. That's a trap. You can talk about your insecurities a little bit, but you can't let it control you. You have to be confident as you do it. You got to do that kind of thing. And I think that's bad juju. It's like bad advice.
Yeah, I mean,
at some level, I agree. You got to be able to share your feelings, no doubt, as we talked about. But
I sort of interpret all of that. You know, I agree with you. Like, I personally wouldn't want to be dating someone who was, overly, who seemed weak in that way.
There you go. Yeah, there it is.
I am totally okay with someone who's a great dad. Like, it is kind of sexy if guys get emotional about their kids sometimes, or they're so proud of them.
Sure, that's great.
That a little bit sexy. But I feel like what Brene Brown, this is how I interpreted it, because I think this is the lens I see everything through now.
Well, of course.
Like, to be vulnerable means to be willing to make changes and be true to yourself. And so I didn't interpret it as like be, upset all the time or whatever, but really be willing to say, this is what I need right now. And I'm going to do it, or I can't be happy unless I'm true to myself.
See, now I agree with that completely. And when I read her stuff, I didn't think that at all. I take that for granted, that you have to do that. I don't know, maybe I need to read it again.
Yeah, well, no, I think you're probably right, because we interpret vulnerability as that, like we're sad weakness. All the time. Or
yeah, it's weakness.
Like when you watch The Bachelor, he's always, I said that should be a drinking game. You should have a national drinking game of every time they say, you've been so vulnerable with me on The Bachelor.
They do? They say that? I don't watch that show, but yeah.
Constantly. It is, I shouldn't watch it either. Don't judge me. They're my coat pockets. Sorry, I
get it. I'm stomping all over your time here. I've had it.
No, that's okay, because I could talk about this forever. It's fun to end on the drinking game note. We can start a trend.
We could. Hashtag vulnerability. Take a shot.
Yeah, take a shot. Right.
Well, Regina, I sure appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. I'm glad that I got a chance to get to know you. At some point, as my show grows, I'm going to want to lean on you ask you questions about things. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to be back. And it's this is obviously such a big conversation. There's so many different facets to it, so we can definitely pick it up again.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I hope you have a great day. I'm going to text you some information, because I like to send out a little swag package so that you can have some memorabilia from being on the show, and go from there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I will be back in touch, I'm sure.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, too.